I'll call the Columbian up and pitch that for you. Okay, we'll make the.
Welcome to the Exploring Washington State podcast. Here's your host, Scott Cowan.
Well, welcome back to this episode of the Exploring Washington State podcast. My guest today is Micah Rice. Micah is your LinkedIn says you're the sports editor at the Columbian, but it also says that you're the news editor. So Micah, why don't you tell my listeners about you? Let's just go that way.
Current sports editor, former news editor, which actually is a bit of a misnomer. What I actually did was manage the copy desk and kind of guide our transition from being grammar police and sticklers over style to more managing the content on the website. And so after that transition, I've always loved sports. And when the opportunity came to rejoin my roots in the sports department there at the Columbian, I jumped at it. And other than that, just in that perpetual wonderment of, will this be the year the Mariners finally make the playoffs?
Oh, you had to go there right away, didn't you? I did. I saw an anecdote yesterday. Obviously, Sue Bird got an amazing send-off on her final home game with the Seattle Storm. Someone mentioned that between the Mariners last making the playoffs, Sue Bird managed to fit a 21-year professional basketball career in. That's painful. All right, yes. So we're gonna stop. I'm gonna get your background, but let's talk Mariners for a second.
Yes.
Put you on the spot. Are they gonna make the playoffs this year?
I believe this is the year, and call me a Pollyannish optimist, but I just think the moves they've made and not standing pat, and especially the Luis Castillo acquisition. Yeah, they really, I believe, have the tools to survive that wild card chase. Are they as good as the Astros? No. Are they? Who knows what's going to happen once you get in the postseason? But just making it, I think, and having baseball be relevant in August and September for us long-suffering Mariners fans is a treat.
Should they have gotten Soto? Should they have mortgaged the future?
I would say no, because I don't think you can keep whatever kind of group they're trying to build there, and if you bankrupt your franchise or bankrupt your farm system. And I think being able to make 3 or 4 good acquisitions over the course of a year is probably more effective than one blockbuster acquisition. And so I think even though, Suarez, Winker, you'd like to see their batting averages a little higher. I love the Carlos Santana acquisition. It looked at what he's done to that. It was amazing when he joined. The team really came together and kind of put their early season struggles behind, not just for what he's done on the field, but also in the clubhouse. And then I just think that Castillo acquisition is the missing piece to put that rotation in a position to have a real strong finish in the down the home stretch.
Did they overpay for Castillo?
I don't think so. No, I think that's a move you got to make. Young arm, electric stuff. Yeah, you have Robbie Ray, and so you basically have an ace and a 1A, or an A and a 1A at the top of that rotation.
Well, and Gilbert's an interesting arm. I don't disagree with anything you're saying. I'm just sitting here, and as a long-suffering Mariners fan, I would have preferred to see them bring back Roberto Clemente, Mickey Mantle, and Don Drysdale. It just guarantee us a playoff. Please guarantee us a playoff victory. Get us into the
it's not even get us into the World Series. Just get us back to the American League Championship Series. That would seem like that would put a lot of fans in the seats and do a lot to bring back, Mariner mania. I used to work down by the ballpark in 95. And do you remember in 95, about this time in 95, they were not relevant. And then they went on a run, and that downtown Seattle was electric. And I would love to see that happen again.
I was a freshman at the University of Puget Sound in Tacoma that year. And I remember kind of momentum building, and then that Yankees series, being in the basement of the dormitory I lived in at my freshman year with probably about 20 other people. And when Edgar hit that double and Griffey comes tearing around third and slides headfirst in and they win, it was a mosh pit in front of the television down there. I've never seen a team kind of captivate a community like that Mariners team did. And obviously you have the Seahawks that kind of followed that, and when they were winning the Super Bowl, it was they captivated the whole. But that was the first time I had really experienced that, and so 20 plus years of hurt after that. I mean, it's just the price to pay for getting hooked at that age.
No, we've paid way more. I mean, what really hurt was in 2001, 116 wins and then out. That was bitterly painful, because that was an amazingly talented team too. Anyway, well, like I warned you, we kind of go down rabbit holes when we have these conversations. So what we were trying to do is find out a little bit about you. And now we've talked about the Mariners. So you went to UPS. Where did you, before UPS, where did you grow up?
I grew up in Eugene, Oregon. Obviously Northwest guy, through and through. Eugene was a great place to grow up, following the Oregon Ducks. Father was a professor at University of Oregon, ran the geology department there for a while. And I decided I wanted to be rebellious and leave the nest. And so head up north to Tacoma, where it wasn't long before I figured out I wanted to go into sports journalism. And I believe it was the end of my sophomore year, maybe beginning of my junior year, the News Tribune had an opening for a part-time position, and kind of just answering phones and, taking scores in their sports department, and got in there. And it's like, it wasn't long before my opportunities at the newspaper to write and delve into the reporting went up, and my grades went down. My senior year, I kind of knew what I wanted. I kind of knew what I wanted to do.
So I got a couple questions out of all that.
Sure.
Oregon Ducks fan, and I probably should have disconnected you, but we won't. Yeah, how you answer this question will determine if we'll continue our conversation. Did you like the old Oregon Ducks helmets with Donald Duck on them?
In retrospect, they kind of have kind of a cool, funky kind of, I don't know. I get nostalgic when I see that. Everything is so polished now, with basically being the Nike. They are Nike U, and everything is polished and cool. And they last time they played in the national championship game, they didn't have any green and yellow. I believe they wore all white on their, and so yeah, it's kind of someone who grew up watching the Oregon Ducks in the mid 80s and late 80s, and remember when them making it to the Independence Bowl in Shreveport, Louisiana was enough. That restaurant, I believe that they had a nice restaurant, the Oregon Electric Station, and they for years had the front page of the Register Guard framed of the Oregon Ducks making the Independence Bowl. And now you look at what the standards are, and it's,
right,
basically Rose Bowl or bust, or compete for a conference championship every year, hopefully. But it used to be where just Bill Musgrave taking them to the Independence Bowl was a huge deal.
Okay, I grew up in Washington. I grew up in Tacoma. I went to Central, so I can root both for and against the Huskies and the Cougars, depending on, what bandwagon I wanted to jump on. But I'm not a big fan of either school. Like, I don't bleed crimson or purple. Just I appreciate them because they're the local teams. But I just remember Oregon having this kind of, I don't know what the word is I want to use, but just I appreciated them when they were wearing the Donald Duck helmets. I don't enjoy this never-ending smorgasbord of uniforms that they come out with that are so, it doesn't look like football to me anymore. And I'm old, I guess, but I like their helmet with the O on it. I do. The helmet's okay, but I wish that they would go back to the duck once in a while. I just wish they would pay tribute to that. All right. That was question number 1. Question number 2. Do you remember the first article you wrote for the Tribune?
Believe it was covering a basketball game at Foss High School, I believe.
Okay.
That might have been it. I started off basically doing high school sports, which at the time was kind of like, that's how you pay your dues, and maybe eventually we'll let you go up and help out with the Seahawks coverage or the Mariners coverage, and things going full circle. Now, with us being sort of a locally focused sports department and locally focused newspaper here at the Columbian in Vancouver, high school sports is a majority of what we do. So in a way, it's kind of come full circle with that. But I've always viewed high school sports as, you meet a lot of interesting people. You don't run into some of the roadblocks and the egos that you find at some of the professional levels. You get great access to coaches and kids, and really these are the kids that are on the front line of representing your community. When you go to a gymnasium or a high school football game, those are the people that live there and are invested in the community and putting their best foot forward. And so when we have a team that makes a run to the state championship game in football or any other sport, it's really kind of a neat energy to kind of piggyback off of. So I would say seeing high school sports sort of evolve from the late 90s when I first got into this industry to now has been kind of an interesting case study in just how society and sports develop. But there's kind of a purity of it that I always like.
Okay. So once you graduated from UPS, where was your first job?
I actually got hired down here at the Columbian in Vancouver 2 weeks before finals at University of Puget Sound my senior year. So it was an interesting 2-week window where I would come down here, show up to work, and then commute back up north to take a final. I think I had to do that with 2 or 3 classes. So I was like, okay, I better not blow these finals, because kind of the job I have down here is contingent upon me being a college graduate.
College graduate.
Kind of.
All right.
So don't screw this up.
What was your first position with the Columbian then?
It was again just sort of a sports reporter job, focusing on high school sports at the time. I forget the situation, what it was, but we had a staff of about 7 or 8 people, and they needed someone to kind of take the reins of the high school sports beat, and kind of thrown in the deep end. Get to know who the coaches are, get to know who the people are, and come up with some ideas. So good luck.
And better graduate on time. So no pressure to start. All right. So for those of us like myself, but I'm hopeful that if I ask this question, there's others out there that would like to know the answer to. Can you walk us through what the newsroom, like what's the difference between a reporter and an editor? Walk me through, let me give you a scenario. It's Friday night and I don't know the high schools down there. So give me two high schools just played each other and you were to be the reporter for that game. Walk us through what you were doing.
All right, let's just take kind of the biggest rivalry that we have down in here, Camas versus Union football. Both have won state championships in the last 5 or 6 years. They always play kind of at the end of the season. Let's say the game's at Camas, which typically draws some of the biggest crowds of any high school team down here. You're going to want to get to that stadium probably about 2 hours before the game. So if it's a 7 o'clock kickoff, you're there at 5. There's probably already going to be a line waiting to get in. This is not the goal for every high school football game, but just picking kind of the most exciting example. You get there. Get your roster, get your stat sheet ready, wait for the game, kind of, just take it all in. Thankfully, we keep a lot of stats for high school football as the season goes along on our own, so we'll have a good idea who the leaders of each team are. We'll watch the game. I usually try to keep a kind of running stat total going, so I know, this kid has 20 yards on 6 carries. This quarterback, he's 10 for 12 for 180 yards and a touchdown. And so I'm keeping those as we go, but also giving updates on social media. Really, that's been the biggest change I've seen in the industry as far as a day-to-day reporter's job is having that social media presence where basically no one wants to wait for the next day's paper. They want the information now. And so whether that's giving updates on social media or posting your story right when it's ready for the website so people can read it within half an hour of the game ending. That's what a reporter has to do. So say the game ends, it's last second touchdown. You'll go down, find maybe a key player, usually a couple of them. I try to videotape all my interviews with my phone so that that can be something else I share either on social media or embed it with the article online. I think there's kind of a transparency that goes hand in hand with posting a raw interview. Not only do you get to see, especially in the aftermath of a really big win or an exciting game, you get to kind of share in the excitement of that and see that on the kids' faces. But also, you can see a quote I might use in its full context. And so after doing that, after getting a few interviews and getting all that, depending on the situation and depending on the time of night, I might have a laptop computer with me, and I'll write the story there in the stadium. Maybe I'm in the top row of the bleachers with, while they're locking the fences and shooing everybody off. I'll be putting the finishing story or touches on my story. I'll either email it in to the person who's kind of managing everything back in the office. So that person usually is putting together the next day's print product. They might be responding to emails for some games that are outside of the area. It's a team effort, definitely. We'll have 5 people working on a given Friday night.
Okay. So, all right. Where do you watch the game from? Are you in the press box? Are you sitting in the stands? Are you on the field?
It sort of depends on the stadium. Some stadiums will have room in the press box. Many don't. I just prefer. I honestly prefer to just sit in the stands. There's times also when, depending on what the situation is, I'll walk along the sideline with my notepad, taking stats by hand. But I think an ideal situation, I'll just find kind of a corner of the stadium and just sort of set up there and not get in anyone's way and just take in the game.
Okay. So you're there a couple hours before. Sounds like you're there probably an hour afterwards, give or take.
Yeah, and now to be fair, if it's a game that doesn't involve two of the most popular teams in the area, you can get away with showing up half an hour before. But I just kind of gave you the most extreme example.
Okay. Does the paper have a photographer with you, or are you taking the photographs?
That'll depend. If it's kind of our big game of the night, we'll have one of our professional photographers there as well, and that's another thing that we can add. That's changed with the industry versus how I was when I first got in. At the start, you'd have a photographer taking 50 photographs, and maybe 2 or 3 would be published in the print edition. Now, a photographer will give us 20 photographs, and we'll put them all on the website and have a big photo gallery and share a few on our Instagram page. It's amazing that's really where the next generation of consumers, that's how they digest their information. It's very visual. I'd say a photo of a high school football game on Instagram will get more eyeballs than probably a story on our website proper, or definitely in our print edition. So we'll see those things get shared thousands of times over if it's a real good photo that takes off.
So it's 2022 when we're having this conversation. You started working, what year did you start working for the Columbian? 99?
That would have been 1999.
All right.
Yes.
So you've been doing this 23 years. Now, did the Columbian have much of an online presence in 99? When you started? Okay.
I was there when it was basically, I don't know, the dial-up version of what you'd consider a website. It was basically a repository for, all right, that story was published in print. I guess put it somewhere online, and maybe 100 people will look at it. And now we've really the tables have completely flipped in the industry. It's all online now.
So the question I have then, and that's kind of what I anticipated you saying. So, and let's just say in 2000, just because it sounds easier than 99. In 2000, it was primarily a print paper, and in 2022, it sounds like the online presence is larger than the print version. Fair statement.
Yes.
Okay.
Substantially.
But for print, okay, so you can type up, you can sit in the stands with your iPhone really and type up an article or send something to Instagram instantaneously. But you're going to sit down and well, let's go back to this game, this Camas versus Union. About how many words would the article be, especially if it was an exciting game with an interesting finish?
I would say probably between 500 and 700.
Okay. So you're gonna write that out, and you're gonna send it to somebody at the paper who's putting together the print version for Saturday. Is it Saturday morning? Is that when your paper comes out? Sorry, let's just say it's Saturday morning.
Yeah.
How much editing are they doing now? Because I guess what my question is, back in the day, you'd sent your story to an editor, and were they the grammar police, and did they correct you for, not, you buried the lead or whatever, blah, blah, blah. And do they like almost rewrite your work? But now, is there that attention to the story? I'm not trying to say like there's not attention, but I don't mean like that. But is there an editor reworking for print?
In our department, no. Okay. And sometimes with some of the, we get called out on our mistakes when we made them. But unfortunately, that's that's a layer that's been more or less kind of. It's not something that happens as diligently in the sports department, because we kind of work on a different protocol than, say, the news side, which, they have a dedicated copy desk and they have a couple of different editors that work with that. But with us, we're basically a all hands on deck situation on a Friday night, where everyone that can be out at a game is out at a game.
Okay.
And then the one person who's back in the office is crunching, trying to make our deadline, which, it used to be a little later, but now it's probably about 9:30.
Wow.
That you have to be at 10 at the latest. And so it's,
wow.
It's a flood of stories and content and information that comes in all about the same time. So
8:57.
There isn't the chance to really, there isn't a chance to give a real thorough edit to something right before deadline. So we just kind of have to rely on our instincts and do the best we can. And then after deadline, we can always go back online and edit and clean up an article or clean up a mistake. But again, it'd be nice to not make it in the first place.
Well, of course, but I'm trying to get a feel for how your workflow is now, because like you said, and I watched this sitting this season in the press box for the Apple Sox. I'm watching our radio guy send out social media updates too, right? And you're right, the people are consuming that probably more than is consuming it in the Wenatchee paper the next day. I mean, that's just my assumption.
I would think that would be correct. Yeah. I would describe our workflow as it increases, as the night goes on, the intensity increases and it reaches a fever pitch right when our deadline is. And then it takes a long time to wind down from that. We're probably there, and then if, maybe we have a highlight video that we edit. And so we're after the words are done, we'll be hopping on a video editor program and highlight or put together some, footage of the touchdowns we record with our phone and splice it in with some of the interviews that we've done. And so it's not unusual for it to be well after midnight, and we're still working at the newspaper or at the office, putting together that next day's content.
Okay. Now I'm going to put you on the spot with this question. And before I ask this question, Micah's answer is his personal opinion only. Okay. What is your favorite sport to cover?
I would say football, just because it feels like a big event. It's always, there's so much content out there right now. There's so many games, there's, you can watch anything on TV all year. The reason I think football resonates with the American sports audience is that it's not all year long. It's not every day. There still is something special about Friday night lights at high schools, or Saturday afternoon on colleges, or Sunday NFL. I think the fact that these high school teams, they have 9 games over a 2.5 month period to determine whether their season is a success or not. And so it's not like baseball where you can have a bad day or a good day, and you just kind of brush it off and keep a level head and move to the next one. With a football game, if your kicker makes a game-winning kick that shifts a loss from, or what would be loss, into a win, I mean, that's a big deal. And I think that's reflected in the excitement and the emotion after a game. You hardly ever see kids cry after a regular season basketball or baseball game, but I can cite several examples when it's been a really intense football game, and there's the tears of joy or tears of frustration even after a game in the middle of the season. And so I think one of my favorite parts of why I wanted to get into this industry in the first place is you get to be you get to ride along with a lot of emotion and drama and see that and live through it vicariously, and you see that, I think, more on a football night than you do with any other sport. Now, there are obviously exceptions. You go to the state basketball tournament or the state volleyball tournament, and you have a few days of pretty intense competition and stories and emotion. But just consistently, football is something that where the emotional investment of those who are participating and watching and supporting is just at another level.
All right. Next question. You can pick any sporting event to cover. What would you want? Like, what would be the holy grail, if you will, of like the Columbians assigned you to go and cover X? What would that be for you?
Well, I think I've actually already done it. We used to cover the Seahawks, not anymore. And so I was down there at the ill-fated Super Bowl when they did not give the ball to Marshawn Lynch at the 1-yard line. So but now that answer comes with a caveat. Okay. Probably it was maybe the most amazing event I've covered, but I wouldn't want to do it again. Okay. There's something about when you're at a real big event and it's, we call it pack journalism. Good luck getting any sort of exclusive quote or angle or when there's 50 people crowding around Russell Wilson. Right. You're not going to get anything that you wouldn't be able to get by just watching the event online, but I'm glad to have seen sort of the spectacle of covering a Super Bowl and just kind of how big and oversized and unusual and just crazy that is. But if I had to do that every year, I think it's not my cup of tea.
That's actually amazing, though. You were able to cover Super Bowl. All right, so that would have been your pinnacle thing. All right, let me rephrase the question. Now that you've done that, what would you like to cover? Like, would you like to cover? I don't know. Pro golf tournament. I don't know what else would be fun for you, and not that high school's football. I don't mean it like that, but like, you got the unlimited budget. The paper's going to pay for you to go somewhere. You get to pick. What would
now you're really off in fantasy. Now you're really in fantasy land.
I know. But if we're gonna dream, we're gonna make it completely unrealistic. But the paper says, Micah, you tell us, we'll send you. Where would you want to go?
Oh, I'd like to do the Soccer World Cup.
Okay. All right.
Always been a big fan of international soccer.
Okay.
You obviously are going to run into sort of the same issues you do with, covering any big event, whether it's the World Series or the Olympics, or you're going to not have. You're basically not going to have any sort of special access that that anyone else wouldn't have. But I think I'd want to do kind of like offer a series of postcards traveling around the host nation and interacting with the different fans from all over the world. I've always been a big fan of international travel and experience different meeting different cultures and people in their terms where they live.
Okay.
And so I think probably a World Cup would be probably the most conducive venue to that.
That's a very interesting. I like the angle of doing quote unquote postcards from the country. That's very cool. I'll call the Columbian up and pitch that for you. Okay, we'll make.
Well, we do have a community-funded journalism initiative going on where local donors in our community can help support what we do. And so if you want to, if you're sitting on a large inheritance and want to direct some of that money to have Micah Rice cover the next FIFA World Cup, I would not say no to that.
Wouldn't say no to that. Okay. Well, I want to shift gears for a second, because the reason that I reached out to you was because of an article I saw in the Seattle Times. And when I saw it in the Times, I read the article in the Times, and then I started, the power of the internet. I found out that you had written an article about this individual a couple of years earlier, and your byline actually had a phone number on it. So I actually picked up the phone, and you actually answered the phone, and we actually talked. And that's about Wink Lamb. And I think one of the things when we talked about having you on as a guest was to talk about things in the Vancouver area, because the show's all about Washington State. Can we talk about Wink for a second in the way that when you wrote the article, how did you hear about him? I mean, how did this all come about?
I think someone at the athletic club where Wink swims at reached out and said, hey, you might not know about this, but there's a guy, he's 95 years old, and he's breaking all sorts of masters age group records in swimming. And so obviously you hear about that, and so that's very cool. And you never know what you're going to get when you haven't met someone before, especially someone at that age. Obviously, he's still, has everything still pretty well together if he's swimming that well. And so it was, I remember it being a fascinating interview. Just one little detail I remember, he had a little paper notepad, and he'd obviously had it for a while. The pages were kind of a little bit off yellow from age, but he had all of his swim results in there, and so he could go back and tell you, I swam this at this race 10 years ago, 15 years ago, and he's still going strong at 95 at that time. And from what I understand, now he's 100 and still going strong. Just I remember one of the things he told me is that he never had an office job. He worked with worked, I believe, in a woodworking company or something like that. But he was always someone who kept his body in shape, and it just goes to show that if you maintain this machine we've all been given at birth, then it can last a long time.
So your article was written in 2017, correct? Yes. But
that sounds about right. Yeah.
So the one that just came out in July of 2022 in the Times, at the time that they wrote it, he was still 99. I think he's going to be 100 sometime in the month of August. And he's currently, at the time we're recording this, he's back east competing in another tournament, another Masters swim meet. And so the guy's 99 years old, and he's still swimming and traveling competitively. I mean, that's amazing. So that's somebody, there's somebody from the Vancouver area. He retired from that job, the job that you mentioned. What I read was he retired when he turned 80. When the place closed down is when he retired. So the man worked 40 hours a week until he was 80 years old, which is not typical, is it? But so using Wink as an example of an interesting person from Southwestern Washington, what other stories do you have from like the Vancouver area? What else is interesting down? And I just don't know that much about Vancouver, so I'm not trying to say that there's not anything. I just don't know. What else is interesting down in Vancouver?
Well, I would tell you, if you haven't been to downtown Vancouver in the last 5 years, if you visit today, you'll feel like you're in a completely different city. We've downtown Vancouver is just undergoing an amazing facelift right now, and it's all centered around the Columbia River waterfront. In the last 5 years, we've had a flurry of building activity down in the downtown waterfront. I'd say if you're familiar with the I-5 corridor and maybe have driven through Vancouver but never stopped, when you hit the heading southbound on I-5, when you hit the Interstate 5 bridge, look to your right, and that's where you'll see basically the whole new face of Vancouver. They have a waterfront that is just amazing and a real big draw on a typical summer night. You'll go down there and there'll be 1,000 people out there walking around at the new restaurants, at the new bars and cafes. They have a pier that juts out over water that has some really unique architecture, and sort of connected to that. We used to joke that when I moved to downtown Vancouver, or when I moved to Vancouver, downtown was a bunch of pawn shops and convenience stores, and not really anything you'd want to go. Now it's restaurants, cafes, upscale apartments and condominiums, and it really, I think to me, downtown Vancouver right now is what the Pearl District in Portland used to be about 10 or 15 years ago. And I think there's a real desire, well, I can only speak for myself, but if I can do everything that you used to have to go to Portland to do and stay in Vancouver,
all right.
I would rather stay right here.
I joke with people that bring up Portland that Portland's dead to me for this show. I'm just kidding. We're all about Washington. We don't want to go across the bridge to Portland. Portland's a great place. Don't get me wrong. Well, you mentioned restaurants and bars and all that. So a question I always ask guests are, I love coffee. Do you drink coffee? Well,
of course. One of my first jobs was as a barista at Starbucks over the summer at the University of Village.
You worked at the U Village store?
Seattle. Sophomore.
You worked at the U Village store?
Before my sophomore year.
Okay.
I did.
That was the flagship.
For a summer there. Back when they only had just one. Now I think they have
I know, but that was the flag.
Now I think they have like
what year
3
was that?
there.
Probably. No, that would have been 97 or so.
That would have been 1996.
I was in corporate 96. At Starbucks then, and that was one of the big flagship stores. There was one in New York I was in the IT department, and so when they were rolling out new cash registers and things like that, I had a small part in that whole thing. And the University Village store, I just remember going in there and they had I think it was like a $1,500 espresso machine. It was a real like not like the little Starbucks espresso machines that you could put on your countertop. This was a 2-head, like you could open a coffee shop espresso machine. I just remember, they sell those? I mean, does people buy them? But I guess they did. Well, please tell me, this is the...
I'm still a little scarred from... I'm still a little scarred from one thing that summer. That was the summer that Starbucks decided to debut their Frappuccinos, which... I don't know. Yeah, maybe I'm a coffee purist, but I don't view that as coffee. And so it was all the rage. New thing, sweet coffee drink. I think it was pretty warm in Seattle that summer, so it really took off. Having to make those things and just the residual stickiness that got on all the equipment from all the sugar and brewing up the, and having to, I've never gone back to being a fan of the real sweet coffee drink. Never was, but after that, I would never attempt to be a fan of the sweet coffee drinks. It was like, kind of like seeing all that goes into making Frappuccinos and the stickiness and the sugar content and the minimal amount of coffee that's actually in those drinks.
So I can
has stuck with me throughout my coffee drinking life.
Number one, they never gave the stores enough space to make these drinks because they were wedging the blenders in. Okay, so we know that. Number two, when at corporate, we had coffee rooms on every floor. So we had espresso machines. I mean, it was a great place to work as far as if you loved coffee. And we had do you remember the Frappuccino mix came in those cardboard boxes, like kind of like the same boxes that like oat milk comes in. Okay. Did you ever read the ingredients?
Yes.
So the stuff that we had the very first year,
I might have.
So the number one ingredient. Now I know it's changed since then. So but the number one ingredient. So there's two takeaways on Frappuccinos that I have. Number one ingredient was sea kelp.
I don't remember that.
Sea kelp was the
It's a health food.
Yeah, it was sea kelp. Well, it's a thickener. It's also a thickener. Yeah. So that was the number one by volume ingredient. It was sea kelp. And the number two thing I took away was that there was more calories in a basic Frappuccino than there was in a Big Mac. And then you would see people going and getting a Frappuccino in the morning, one at lunch, and one at night. And those same people would not be caught dead eating 3 Big Macs in a day. You wouldn't, but it was a coffee drink, so they would drink it. But the one takeaway, so I was, one of my past guests was Howard Behar, who was the international president of Starbucks. He's also the individual that got Starbucks to launch Frappuccinos. So in my interview, he's telling the story about how Starbucks down in California basically got this idea and from another coffee company that was basically Starbucks stores were empty in the afternoons and this other places were packed. And then people started coming in going, hey, do you have those frozen coffee drinks? And no. And so one store manager kind of took it upon themselves to kind of develop this thing. And it turned out to be this thing that we call Frappuccino. The dollar revenue, though, actually I think Starbucks brings in more dollars off of Frappuccinos than they do coffee now.
I'm not surprised at all by that.
So, but I just remember that first year, the stores would call and complain about where am I supposed to put this blender? I don't have any counter space. Where am I supposed to rinse? I mean, it was a nightmare to implement. And now, they've retrofitted everything and, the Frappuccino machines take front. I don't know that they have an espresso machine in half this. No, I'm kidding. Okay. So you worked at Starbucks, but you like coffee.
Yes.
Where's a good place in Vancouver for me to go get coffee?
Well, I guess if you really want to get into, the pour over and, kind of really, really go above and beyond. There's a place in downtown Vancouver, right Azure Shore Park. I think it's called, Conifex. I don't go there regularly. But that's a place where you can get they have the glass set up and the pour overs and everything. And it's
does it have kind of a turquoise coffee roaster? Is there a coffee roaster? Yeah, is it right next to where? Is that right next to the place? It's right next to where the farmer's market is.
Yes.
Right?
Yes, it is.
Isn't that?
Yes.
Okay. So I've been there and okay. I'm glad you mentioned that place. I've been there. That was the first place I've ever been to that had a siphon press. And it looks like something out of a chemistry lab. And I was there and the owner was there and it was pretty quiet. And I'm like, what's this siphon? I just said, what's this siphon press? She goes, well, you should have it. I said, okay, I'll have a siphon press. And she's got like a halogen burner. So it's got this red light. So the water's all red. I have a video of it. And I was just fascinated by this. That's a great coffee shop. Yep. I like that place. Yes. They do a really cool, and they're one of the things, I don't know if you know this, but, their beans, their mission is to buy the beans from local roasters in Central and South America, but women-owned coffee farms. So
excellent.
The owners, she's doing her best to support woman-owned coffee farms in Mexico and Central America. All right, that one. Well, since I've been there, I got to I'll put you on the spot. Give me another one. Where might not I have gone?
Let's see. It's like now you can just kind of walk anywhere in downtown Vancouver and you'll find something fun. What's the name of that? I used to go there a lot. Haven't been there in a while. It's right on Evergreen in Columbia. Let's see. I will find this. Just give me a second because I'm gonna hate myself for not getting this right.
Well, that's one of the things. What I love about Washington State is that, honestly, no matter how small the community is, there's good to great coffee available almost everywhere. There's some great little, drive-through places in the middle of nowhere, and there's amazing coffee shops in downtown Seattle that are like going to Disneyland.
One of the places that's kind of fun if you're north of downtown, it's a place. It's actually like in an old house. It's called Latte Da Coffee House and Wine Bar, and that's on Latte Da.
Okay,
it's on 39th Street, and they have it set up to where it is an old house basically.
Okay. All right, and
so you would. You could go in there and it's a pretty chill vibe, I remember. But if you want something that's a little bit different than your standard just downtown coffee bar, that would be a place on 39th, and that puts you near to the Lincoln neighborhood and the Shumway neighborhood and some of the areas that it's kind of got a cool character. These old houses built in the World War II era with the hidden bricks. Hidden brick company supplied a lot of the material for a lot of the old buildings in downtown Vancouver, and so you see a lot of those style of houses. And it's a good jumping off point for kind of exploring north of downtown.
Okay. One of the things, circling back to kind of being a newspaper person, one of the things that's stylized is newspaper people have places to go. Where I'm thinking is like up in Seattle. Did you ever go to 13 Coins? Did you ever, when you were at the UPS?
I can't say I did.
Okay, no. So 13 Coins was right next to, I think it was the Seattle Times. And so reporters would gather there because it was open 24/7. They'd have a drink in the bar, they'd eat, they'd talk, they'd gossip, do all these things that's quote unquote stylized, newspaper people do. Just like there's places where, coffee shops that cops like to go to and all that stuff. Where's a great place in Vancouver that's close to the paper that you like to go grab a bite to eat, using that kind of as our thread? Is there a, off the beaten path sort of place?
I would say, I wouldn't say that it's, that there's a newspaper place, because it's more, things changed a lot when COVID happened, and a lot of the staff started to work remotely, and it's, and plus, to be honest, it used to be where I was, in my 20s and young reporter, and the other young reporters would go hang out, and then I joined management, and now I'm kind of the old stodger and not the cool guy that gets invited to hang out with the young reporters, and that's fine with me. But but if you want, a place that I like, it's there's a taco place in downtown Vancouver called Little Conejo, which means Little Rabbit.
Okay.
And and that is I think that is just fabulous for having some good flavorful street tacos in downtown Vancouver. But yeah, it's you're making me wax nostalgic when I used to, it would be there'd be other reporters in our 20s, and we go and get a drink and afterwards. But now, you're in management long enough, and you kind of I think you have to have a little bit of separation between what you do, and because you might have to have some uncomfortable conversations about someone's work or their future employment status or anything. Sure. So I kind of. Yeah, and plus I've got 2 daughters that I've missed way too much of their growing up, working a lot of nights. So
gotcha.
My All free time, I usually I'm pretty boring. I just spend it with my family pretty much.
Well, you brought up another topic that's near and dear to my heart, and that's street tacos. So what do you recommend there? Mm-hmm. So what's the go-to
They have
move?
A brisket taco that's
really
brisket taco that's fabulous. Okay. Al pastor that snuck up on me that was pretty spicy. So you got but you can just it's a kind of place where you can sample 3-4 different kinds and choose what you like.
All right. Well, that's okay. That's all right. So half the fun for me on these conversations is now I've got a new coffee shop to try when I go to Vancouver. Now I've got a place for tacos, and my goal is to talk to Wink Lamb, and I have a feeling I'm going to have to come to him. I just have this feeling. And now that there's street tacos in play, I don't mind coming to Vancouver. Not, let's go. Street tacos.
All right. Make a reason.
Yes, there we go. Thank you for helping me. Well, let's circle back to, let's circle back to the Columbian, because something you either said this before I hit record, or you said it very early on in this conversation, and honestly, I don't remember which, but you basically said that the Columbian has kind of focused on high school sports, local, kind of going more hyper local. Did I paraphrase that fairly accurately? Okay.
That's a very fair assessment of what we do. It used to be, there's been a big shift. If I look, there's been a huge shift industry wide. Comparing when I first broke in the late 1990s to now. In the late 1990s, a paper like the Columbian would you probably have a much bigger staff. It'd still be kind of centered around the print edition, and a paper like the Columbian would try to be kind of a regional paper. From a sports perspective, we'd go and we'd, like I said, cover the Seahawks at their home games up in Seattle. We'd cover the Trailblazers with when they were in town, and we'd cover college football, maybe go up to Seattle or even over to Pullman for one of the big games. For a not news or for a non-sports story, like say when the new Carissa ran aground near Coos Bay, one of our reporters went down there and would be on the scene for that. Now, as revenues have dwindled across the industry, and as the internet has kind of changed how people gather their information. Now there's no point in me going up to a Seahawks game when anyone can go online and read everything that the Seattle Times does, that ESPN does. Is that the best use of a local newspaper's resources to just kind of cover the same ground that 1,000 other people are? And so what we've done, and I think very successfully, is what are the stories in our community that aren't getting told? What voice can we give and have and share that you're not going to find anywhere else? And so I think you've seen the pivot, across our company within the last 10 years to really focus on what's going on in Southwest Washington, and in particular Clark County. And this is where I think the Columbian is pretty well situated, in the fact that we're locally owned and independent. I can just name time after time in this industry where a local newspaper has been bought by a chain or a hedge fund, and people with no investment in the local community who basically just look at it like an asset. And so the newsroom gets gutted, and reporters burn out, and that leads to basically an information desert in some of these local communities where you don't have an engaged and vibrant local news source. But the Campbell family has owned the Columbian for 100 years, and everything is it's owned by people that have are invested in the community, that love the community, that have relationships in the community, you don't have to convince a hedge fund manager that it's worth putting resources into covering what's going on in Clark County. And so, thankfully, we've ridden out some turbulent times in the industry, and our newsroom's at a bigger point staffing wise than it's been in 10 years probably. And it's been a great place for me to kind of allow rise up through the ranks and join a management role and raise a family.
That's actually good.
It can still be done in local journalism, believe it or not.
I love that, because if you believe everything you read, local media is dead, blah 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 blah. And I think I told you the Wenatchee paper, it's cutting down its number of days of publication, and my mother doesn't, she doesn't go online. She wants to read the paper. And now my mother's generation is dwindling. I still think there's something enjoyable about picking up a paper and reading it. I tend to read more in the paper than I do if I'm on that. I would read more of the Columbian if I had a copy of the Columbian in my hands than I would if I was on the Columbian's website just picking and choosing headlines that seemed interesting to me based on my interests. I don't know why, but that's the way I am.
Sure.
What?
Well, I mean, unfortunately, we're kind of the exception and not the rule in that we are locally owned and independent. I think what you had mentioned about the state of other papers that maybe are owned by a chain, it's a little bit more bleak in my opinion.
Putting you on the spot, you going to root for the Ridgefield Raptors? You going to root for the Portland Pickles?
I'm supposed to be an impartial observer.
No, you as a non-journalist, as a fan of baseball, who are you going to root for?
Well, I mean, I've got to.
Who's got the better story this year, in your opinion?
I've got to always root for the Southwest Washington team. It's Portland's all fine and good, but that's Portland, and we're more than just a bedroom community over here in Southwest Washington. I think you kind of touch your question. I think kind of touches on a deeper issue where for a long time people moved to Southwest Washington because of its proximity to Portland and the fact that you could, the housing was a little bit more affordable here. Probably the schools are a little better funded. But with that kind of came sort of the trappings of being a bedroom suburban commuter community. And what I think I've noticed, and really as people start to put down more roots here, is they want something that's uniquely ours and not just having to go across the river to Portland. And don't get me wrong, the Portland Pickles are uniquely Portland. They are a funky franchise with that plays by their own rules and gets crazy and hashtag get pickled. They do things their own way. But I wrote a column about this when the Ridgefield Raptors kind of first put down roots in 2019, that finally it felt like Southwest Washington was getting something of our own. A sore spot for me is how local local leadership missed on the opportunity to bring the minor league baseball team that would eventually settle in Hillsboro, Oregon. That's the Hillsboro Hops. That could have been in Vancouver if the right investments had been made to build a ballpark near Clark College. And I think that would I think it was short-sighted that leadership didn't make that investment to bring minor league baseball to Clark County. I think they misjudged the desire to have something uniquely our own on this side of the river. But now you see, Ridgefield, they're drawing of more than 1,000 people a game, which for the West Coast League is pretty good. You've seen not just the building on the waterfront. They built the casino up north near La Center. There's really been a building boom, I think, in stuff that allows you to stay on this side of the river and do everything that you typically have to go somewhere else to do. And I think the Ridgefield Raptors are sort of a part of that. They are, in the summer, it's that they are Southwest Washington's sports team that you can go and watch on a night in, night out basis. And so from that element, I would like to see Ridgefield make a run and continue to do what they hope. They made the playoffs for the first time last season and only their second year of play, and now they've made it 2 years in a row. I like to see that stability.
Okay. Approximately in the Vancouver metro area, how what's the population down there now?
Oh, it's over about 500,000 for all of Clark County, I think. Yeah. Wow. Vancouver proper, I think you're probably looking at 250,000, but Clark County, when you include the unincorporated areas, Camas, Hawkinson, Ridgefield, by percentage wise, it's been one of the fastest growing cities in Washington for several years in a row. Now, with that comes some downsides. We've lost kind of a little bit of our rural charm and character that people remember. I can't count the number of dairy farms and berry farms and fruit orchards that have now been turned into fields of $500,000 to $1 million homes. So there's a cost that comes with that, but with I don't know that you make the investments in building the new waterfront and some of the other things that have kind of come along in a more mature Clark County without that influx of population.
You kind of alluded to this earlier, but I'm not going to let you off the hook. You said you're kind of a boring guy and you hang out with your kids. But when you're not writing, when you're not working for the paper, what do you guys like to do for fun in and around Clark County?
Well, training for a triathlon, so that I like that because with running and biking, you really get to kind of see the parts of the county that you normally otherwise wouldn't. But see them at a level that you don't really get when you're in a car. You get a whole different set of space and time when you have to get to a place or you go on a route on your own power and not inside of a vehicle. Other than that, it's just we'll watch whatever show is our girls are interested in. My oldest daughter is kind of looking at having interest in becoming a lawyer, so our show that we're really into now is Better Call Saul on AMC. No, to be fair, she doesn't want to be a Saul Goodman type of lawyer, but just the whole legal profession. Her favorite thing she did when schools kind of went all remote is join the mock trial team. So I think that was a great way for her to stay engaged when schools went all remote.
I don't know that she's getting an accurate representation of the legal field with
No, but the more accurate representation comes from my wife. She's an investigator for one of the law firms here, and works on a lot of pretty serious cases. And so you get an unvarnished and accurate look at the legal profession, the criminal justice profession through that window.
Okay, sorry, I'm just like, wow. So. Well, last question for you is my get out of jail free, which is, what didn't I ask you that I should have?
I don't know. Am I that interesting? I don't know. We'll see.
Oh no, I mean, it's just, is there something we should have covered? Is there something that we that we didn't cover that you think is worthy of sharing?
No,
we could go on and talk about Clark County for a long time.
You didn't ask me when I froze my butt off and got interrogated by FSB in Russia when I was living over there.
I did not know. Well, that's not a Washington story, but
So I took a.
Go ahead. Let's hear that. I want to hear it.
I took a little break. I took a little break from sports writing in 2001 and went on a Peace Corps service stint over and ended up in Siberia teaching English in a town of about 2,000 people, where in the dead of winter it got down to minus 42 degrees. So cold, if you can envision this, that frost would form on the inside of your windows, and so you wouldn't be able to look out and see outside because you'd have a half of inch of ice on the inside of your windows.
Okay.
Yeah, that's cold.
That's inhuman.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Well, what was it like there during the summer?
It was nice, really nice.
Was it
long days?
Really? But like, how warm would it get during the summer?
It would consistently get up to about 80.
Oh, geez.
Okay. I was probably at the same degree north as probably Anchorage, Alaska is, okay. And but the difference being that Anchorage is right on the sea. Where I was if you look at a map of Russia and put your finger almost smack dab in the middle of the country, that's where I was, probably about 100 miles from a large town called Krasnoyarsk. And so when you're in the middle of the continent like that, you can get some, you get real cold winters and somewhat warm summers.
Now, you mentioned you were being questioned. What happened there?
They just happened to put me not that far away from a military area, a closed city as they call them.
Okay.
And so this was, you have to flash back to 2001, 2002. This is where Vladimir Putin started to really consolidate his power and flex his muscle and sort of play on, kind of a Russian nationalist platform that we don't need anybody's help. And so what are these Americans doing over here teaching, English and other things to our, subversive ideas to our kids. And so, I had to go down and do a extensive interview with the local FSB officer, all in Russian. And I kind of look at that as that was my final exam for how I did in learning the language. It's like, all right, go down and go to the basement of the police station and justify your existence here in Russian to someone from the security service.
Okay.
Needless to say, needless to say, within a few months, my visa was revoked and I was sent home.
You were sent home. All right.
Evidently, they didn't like me being in the area where I was.
Okay. Wow. Never have I.
But it allowed me to come back and rejoin the paper and settle down and kind of been there, done that, and realize the value of what's going on in this side of the world after having seen life on the other side of the world. Not that there weren't a lot of great things, and I think you find good people everywhere you go. I recently had another experience where I joined a Clark County-based group called Courts for Kids. And my daughter and I went to Dominican Republic to build a multi-purpose sports court in the Dominican Republic. And so like I said before, I think it's a great value to go and interact with other people and other cultures on their terms, eating what they eat, living where they live, walking where they walk. I got to do that, earlier in my life, and want to continue to do that.
That's great
going forward.
That's wonderful. Where can people find out more about you, more about your writing? Where's a good place for people to go and look your stuff up?
Well, if you want to see what we do, I don't write as much as I used to. I'm kind of more of a coordinator, planner, budget guy.
Okay.
But if you want to see we go back to our hyper-local coverage, obviously Columbian.com, you can see everything that we do. But if you want to see what we do and really focus on high school sports, 360preps.com.
360 preps? Prep as in plural?
Yep, 360, just like
the area code.
Preps is in plural. 360, just like the area code down here.
Okay.
Yep.
What's your involvement with that? Is that a Columbian site, or is that
is the Columbian site? That's our homepage for high school sports coverage.
Okay. All right. What? Well, let me ask you this question. I'm going to close. I'm going to ask one last question. In your opinion, Clark County, what sport on the boys' side and on the girls' side, each side has a separate answer. What's the strongest sport?
Oh, football's been,
like when I grew up in Tacoma.
Football has been very strong.
Football. All right. So what about on the girls' side?
Volleyball. We had a state championship volleyball team at the 2A level from Columbia River High School, and the team that they beat in the championship game, Ridgefield, was a two-time state champion before them. And in fact, the only games that each of those teams lost last year was to each other. And so, the volleyball down here at the 2A level is fabulous. And, you have two talented teams, a little bit of a rivalry going on there. And so that's always a blast to cover.
All right. Yeah, no, volleyball's a great sport. I wish at the high school level they had boys volleyball. I wish there was a way of, I know we've got to have equal sports on both sides, so I wish there was a way to add boys volleyball, because I loved playing volleyball when I was in college. It's a great sport.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, Micah, thank you for your time. I appreciate it. I learned more about, well, I'll say Vancouver, but Clark County. I now have some street tacos to go check out.
Excellent.
Which is, I appreciate the recommendation. And got some coffee choices. I think I need to go down to I think it's Califex is the name of it, and I'll put it in the show notes. But the siphon press there is just a very cool thing. And I haven't been to the waterfront, so I'm gonna have to go check that out.
Definitely check that out.
Yeah, thank you so much for taking the time.
You're welcome. Good to talk to you.
Well, thanks for being on. All right.
Join us next time for another episode of the Exploring Washington State podcast.